Welcome to Connect with Rohan on Ideal Island. Cyclone Dithwa. It has caused widespread damage across the country, which is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is now in the post-disaster phase, transitioning from providing immediate relief to those displaced to restoring and rebuilding the affected communities. To discuss all of this, I'm very pleased to be joined today by the President of the Sarvodaya movement, Dr. Vinya Ariyaratne. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
And also Sarvodaya's Chief Transformation Officer, Manu Tissera. A very warm welcome to you too. Welcome aboard. Sarvodaya, you have been in Sri Lanka as probably the largest voluntary services organization for a long period of time. Disasters, sad to say this, but it's not something new to you as an organization. What's your role today post-Dithwa cyclone? What's your input, or the output rather, to Sri Lanka in its initial aid stage? Now it's restoration, hopefully the rebuilding stage. Now that's a lot of it's one question with so many subcategories. Perhaps, Vinya, you may want to walk us through Sarvodaya's background and your preparedness for this type of post-disaster recovery action. All yours.
Thank you, Rohan, and thank you for giving this opportunity to share the work of Sarvodaya in relation to the Dithwa disaster. So Sarvodaya, as you said, is the most broad-based development organization in Sri Lanka, which is a grassroots movement, and it has a history of more than 67 years of serving the country. So during its more than 6 decades of working with the people, have faced many a disaster, both what we call human-induced or man-made, as well as natural disasters.
Such as Dithwa.
Such as Dithwa, and before that, the tsunami and dam collapse and all sorts of disasters. Sarvodaya has been responding as a people's movement, grassroots organization, mobilizing local resources, mobilizing volunteers, right? So now, when you look at the recent history, recent past, we know that tsunami has been a landmark in terms of, it's a turning point in terms of disaster management overall in Sri Lanka, not just impacting Sarvodaya as a grassroots development organization.
That was 2004.
2004 December. We just, actually today, it happened today, 21 years ago.
Yeah. We are recording today on the 26th of December, 2025. So it was 21 years ago. 2004.
Yeah, a day like today it happened.
That's right.
And the country wasn't prepared at all, and that was of course a disaster that we never knew existed. Even the word tsunami was not known to us.
Yes.
So since then, now before the tsunami disaster, Sarvodaya has been focusing on how to respond properly to disasters. So we have trained volunteers on various, search and rescue and all that at a very sort of basic level, life support and all that kind of thing. However, for some reason, just before the tsunami disaster happened, we have had an organized training for all our full-time staff, more than 300, and to our volunteers on basic disaster response in general. And then the tsunami happened, and then, of course, we were at the forefront, and then we were responding to the needs. And again, it was very different to this disaster because everything was over within maybe 40 minutes. And then not all the districts were affected. That was on the coastal belt, 13 or 14 districts. But in this case, it was the entire country became a disaster zone, all 25 districts. That is a major difference. Then, of course, with the tsunami and the experience we gained, and also for the government, it became, it was an eye-opener for everyone. And the Disaster Management Act was introduced in 2005. And the disaster response got more formalized, institutionalized, with a disaster management center being formed, and also the inputs from the civil society organizations, mainly humanitarian organizations like Sarvodaya, development organizations, input was also given how to have a more prepared, robust disaster response and prevention mitigation system in Sri Lanka. So the act is really an embodiment of all that experience of both the government sector and the civil society. So since then, there had been various mechanisms created. There has been a policy developed. Then after that, protocols developed. District disaster management committees were formed with representations from organizations like Sarvodaya, civil society organizations. So I think I must say that as a country, we were better prepared than before for this disaster. Then, of course, how we responded was, as you correctly pointed out, the emergency response. That time, but compared to before, we have had volunteers trained much more at a higher level because of some, support that came. I must mention this from United States through USAID, and now that support is completely gone. But we were able to really prepare for various types of disasters, what we call, scientifically called hydrometeorological disasters. That is, on one extreme you have drought, then the other extremes you have floods and landslides, right? And even cyclones, right? So how to assess each district's risk in relation to those disasters, and then we had teams trained and prepared, even with some, rescue equipment like life jackets to boats and all those things. And we also coordinated with other rescue teams, both government as well as Lifesavers Association and non-governmental bodies like that. So we had a somewhat of an informal coordinated mechanism ready to respond. So this time we were able to do some life-saving work as well during the first 48 to 72 hours through these trained volunteers. And we have had, of course, we have a permanent disaster management center in Sarvodaya.
Your own?
Our own. And then we were able to set up that mechanism immediately when the warning was given, because we have always done that. Even in 2016, we had a major flood. And then we had that mechanism where we have an infrastructure down to the village level, which is unparalleled to any other organization in all 25 districts. So within hours, we can give a message, and we can get status updates and so on. That was during normal times, but then even during disaster time, we used to do that. But this disaster was very different because even the communication systems all were cut off, right?
So the mobile telephone systems,
exactly,
everything went off.
Yes. And they were functioning for some time because of the electricity and all that. So during that golden hour or golden hours, we were able to set up a system where people could call in addition to the government numbers, because we are connected to so many other, our own network of villages.
Yes.
And they were also affected.
Right.
And hundreds of villages. We have actually more than 210 villages that we were working with, which were affected by the disaster. So then they were calling us, giving updates, and also saying we need help here and there. And then we conveyed those to the disaster management center and to the security forces. So that first 3 days we were in that mode.
So you were the first responder, like
exactly. Yeah. And we have trained those first responders, and the communication system was also there, and we were able to somehow connect the government rescue teams also with the people who couldn't get directly to get connected with the state systems. And then, of course, when the people were displaced, we were able to, support through cooked meals and so many other things through our volunteers.
So immediate
relief, emergency response. We were doing that for like last 2 weeks. And then now we have entered into what you call the early recovery and the rebuilding phase. And we will respond initially to, we are assessing now the damage that is there in our own Sarvodaya connected villages, but we'll continue to also help now in the health sector. We are also in the health cluster as co-chair. That's a UN system, country humanitarian country team, HCT. So that mechanism has 7 clusters, including health, shelter, nutrition, early recovery, and so on. So we are represented in those, and we are also in communication very closely with the government disaster management center, the Commissioner General of Essential Services, the relevant ministries, and we try to coordinate because we have a responsibility beyond, responding for relief and response to also at a much more policy level. So we are also engaged in giving our feedback and recommendations how to engage in long-term recovery as well.
All right. So, Manu, walk us through the coordination which Vinya mentioned about the Sarvodaya Coordination Center and the Government Disaster Management Center and the others. How does that work behind the scenes or in reality?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting us to share our experiences just aftermath of the disaster. So, as Dr. Vinya explained, we started off the Emergency Operations Center, we call the EOC. It was on the 27th of November, if I'm correct. 27th of November morning, we started off it with a dedicated staff. Actually, our full-time staff were the volunteers and they were all trained.
So the 27th was the
day that
it hit on the 28th.
That's the point I was trying to clarify.
Exactly.
So you were a day ahead.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because the warning was issued the day before.
That's important to understand and note.
Yes.
So the day before you were prepared.
Yes.
And then walk us through as to what you did there.
Sure. So we had the call center operating from the 27th morning 24/7 for 2 weeks continuously. And then we had the staff taking on the calls the staff who are being trained. And initially we were expecting it to be more assistance, type of support but it came on to be more rescue and evacuation as well.
Right.
And then our staff could work with the Triforces and the DMC, and we were directing and rerouting the calls and coordinating to support the mechanism, the government mechanisms. As much as possible, we close the calls. Like we know where the calls are. Either we could have escalated it to a different level, or we would have asked own selves, because as Dr. Vinya said, we also had our volunteers and the rescue teams, and especially we should mention the Sri Lanka Lifesavers Association, who also got together with Sarvodaya on a volunteer basis. And then we were communicating with them and letting them know. People are sending messages on social media saying we are stranded, we need to be, and my mother is stranded, my family is here, my children are there. So we used to be doing a lot of, coordination through the call center. That's at one stage. So another part of it is that when we got the assistance, like the first 3 days, actually the 72 hours had been the critical part, as Dr. Vinya said. And I think if I may bring in the kind of international support that we got directly, especially from the APSL, from the Association of Sri Lankan Professionals in the UK.
Yeah, that's APSL UK, Association of Professional Sri Lankans, yes.
They reached out to us on the 28th morning.
So very much on the ball.
Yeah. And then they reached out to us and asked, what's the situation, and we want to know from Sarvodaya. And they kind of had a lot of confidence on our work at the ground, and they relied on the information we shared. So they wanted to know how we can help and, take us through this, the status. And then, so this call center, the EOC, became the call center to the affected communities as an immediate, relief.
Yeah.
And then also it became like the donor engagement center. So where we get people calling in, getting information, and, we were doing the reports.
Yeah. And we were matching the needs with whatever support that came. So both local and international.
Exactly.
So, and you're geared to do that as well.
Yeah. As well. And then we also got some very good media partnerships coming in. And then we were like, all our senior staff, including Dr. Vinya, was on the public, media, giving information, giving statements, people also at that moment needed a lot of confidence, a lot of emotional support, So Sarvodaya had been that throughout, and then we could demonstrate it further, where people really relied on the information we shared, and also kind of the routes we are taking on in terms of assistance. Then came after the first 3 days, then also we started off food, like especially the cooked food, hot food.
Right?
Yeah,
hot food.
Yeah, meals, prepared meals, and then water, and then certain hygienic, requirements, as well as dry rations. That again, I think as one of our very significant, partners, APSL came on board and asked, like, go ahead and do, what you think is best for the country at this moment.
Two community kitchens. Two community kitchens, one in Colombo and one in
Yakkala we did. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because that's something I wanted to ask on behalf of the donors in the United Kingdom and Europe who made their donations through APSL UK. APSL is a direct action charity. So one of the questions they asked was, when we give money, does it actually reach the people in full? And the assurance we gave them was, yes, in this case, yes, we always assured that everything went down to the recipients. And I think you played a big role in coordinating that effort. So you were Sarvodaya was the conduit to get that aid delivered through the community kitchens. So that's something I was going to ask, which you preempted. So food parcels, water, sanitary, whatever the usual things, emergency needs, you were able to fulfill, up to about 3 or 4 days. So one question that came from Vinya's thoughts were that you have a national network. You mentioned the Emergency Operations Center, which I call the Disaster Management Center by mistake. Yes. The DMC is from the government, EOC is from Sarvodaya. So are you fully connected to the whole island as, where you have contacts and points within the country, or it's just certain areas?
No, throughout, as it was explained earlier, even prior to that. So also when you look at prior to it, the mitigation and preparedness was very much part of our program, which is, I think, which is significant. You want to?
No, you go ahead, but that's something that I want to press home about, because this preparedness, because this won't be the last time we will have a natural disaster. In any part of the country. Because we'll have natural disasters of a national nature, of a localized nature. Right. So basically from after 72 hours or so, did you change the pace or the delivering of what you were delivering to them, people?
Obviously, because on the scale of it, and as well as on the how it evolved, was so dramatic, and every hour the needs were changing. And Sarvodaya was, I think, one of the things that we worked very hard was to ensure that we adapt to the situation quickly, because it is not a plan that we made in the morning and that will last until the end of the day. Yes. But during the day, you would see new situations arising and new needs coming, and we have to plug in. But overall, if you look at, we have so far catered to 21 districts out of the 25 districts in some way or the other, and some districts in a very significant manner. Especially after the first 72 hours, we also went into what you call, it's kind of concurrently, we were also into an early relief stage, early recovery, right? Relief. Exactly. And then going into also through hospital support, and also especially cleaning the hospital facilities, and also ensuring that they can remobilize or kind of reopen these medical, facilities, such. And then in Chilau and Mahayangana specifically, I think again, very kind support came from UK donors who supported for the cleaning, and we sent off actually water from Colombo. At one point we came to a point that we couldn't source nearby places to that, so we sent water from headquarters leaving Moratuur to go to Chilau,
even though Dithwa was overflowing.
Exactly. So and then we had the cleaning equipment and detergents, everything going in. So there was, I think, that window was very important, because how you kind of very quickly adapt to the situation and you respond to it, because that made a lot of, that actually saved a lot of lives and made a lot of people at ease and back to normalcy within a very short period. Had we not been there to kind of, give that cushion during that time, it would have been a very difficult life experiences for many people.
Wonderful. I mean, I just want to add something here. Manu mentioned about APSL coming forward within like 12 to 24 hours or under 24 hours. This channel, Ideal Island, from the UK, we also did an emergency appeal to all our viewers, mainly in the UK and Sri Lanka, of course, but in other parts of the world as well. And we interviewed and showcased the appeals from the APSL, which Manu referred to. And I think you were also contacted by other charities, some other charities in the UK, but we also featured the Sri Lanka Medical and Dental Association, which is also a registered charity, and also Hela Sarana, which is yet another registered charity in England and Wales. These are all heavily regulated charities, supervised and answerable to the Charity Commission of England and Wales. I believe we were not the only, APSL was not the only charity to kick in.
Yes, Rohan, yes. I must really mention and also thank the Sri Lanka Medical and Dental Association of UK. And me being the president of Sri Lanka Medical Association in 2023, I also had, my colleagues who are also members of Sri Lanka Medical and Dental Association. And they also, I think within like 5 days, they contacted and asked, do you need help? I said, of course we need help. And then they immediately mobilized and sent us a grant, which was used to restore some of the clinic facilities, in Kandy. And also now I'm also working in Badulla, Kandegedara Hospital, a transitional hospital. And the assistance received from SLMD is greatly appreciated, and we hope. And actually, they were the part of the support was for emergency relief.
Yes.
But then partly now for even long term or medium term support to restore medical services, preventive as well as curative services.
Excellent. So the money that you donated from the United Kingdom, every penny or the pounds and pence rather, have been spent directly on those who needed it most, especially within the first 5 days.
Now, also, Rohan, you asked about the mitigation, prevention. Now, one of the key aspects of Sarvodaya's readiness is that we have 25 district centers around the country with a full-time staff and thousands of volunteers trained. And we have actually devolved power to each district center.
I see.
And given there's a disaster fund that we have about 2 to 3 million fund is there, centralized fund, which came from donations earlier and our own savings and all that. And then 25,000 rupees is given to all the districts. They can at their discretion immediately use that in the case of a disaster, localized to that district or a generalized one. So in addition, we have trained them on specific response mechanisms, how to coordinate with the government, and if they need help, they contact the EOC at our Sarvodaya headquarters and so on. So, and also I think there is a general acceptance that we need to prepare communities for climate change, because this is a result of climate change. I mean, we are least contributing to the ozone destruction, as a country. Low carbon emission, right? But we are in the top 5 in terms of impact of climate change. And 500 millimeters of rain was unprecedented in the history of this country. So therefore, we have to. This is not the last, cyclone. There will be more. So therefore, preparedness is important. So we are preparing every community that we work to be what we call resilient communities. Resilient for climate disaster, resilient for economic shocks, resilient for pandemics. So I think I see this as an opportunity also for us to be better prepared to face all forms of disasters in the future.
I think this is a very important message both to all our listeners and also politicians across the range, not just those in government, because Sri Lanka is in a vulnerable spot as vis-a-vis the environment, the carbon emissions, or not that we send out bad amounts of carbon, but as a adverse effect of industrialized world carbon emissions, carbon dioxide emissions. Now, so basically, you foresaw, based on meteorological weather reports and all of that, you said at least a day before, but you had a few more days ahead before the disaster, and you were able to hit the ground running on day one or day 0.1, rather than even wait 24 hours. This is not a criticism, but I had to ask this question. So if you were so well pre-prepared, I'm adding new words to the English dictionary, pre-prepared before the event, how come the government overall, and we're not talking politics here, the government itself, of whoever is running it in the past, today, and in the future, why can't they be on the same wavelength as you guys are at Sarvodaya? Because I don't think what you're doing is rocket science. You are using technology in its current stage. Is there a message that you want to pass on? How best the government, from a disaster mitigation standpoint, pre-action, preparedness for the next one? We're not talking of today's cyclone Dithwa.
Right.
Is there a message?
Well, exactly. What I feel is it is, Rohan, I think it's common to any type of disaster, even if it's the economic disaster, it can be a climatic disaster, it can be human-made disaster. I think the vigilance and mitigation, prevention, preparedness, they are all key to it. So I think we are very positive of the approach that Sarvodaya has taken. I think it has become a part of our DNA. The preparedness has always become a part of our DNA.
But that's not my question. How do you pass your DNA on to others?
I think it's one thing that I want to also add to the conversation is that how well we were also placed in some of the national mechanisms. And specifically now after few days, I think after 4 days of the disaster, the DMC put out their first scoping study, to which Sarvodaya made a significant contribution. And just few days ago, last Tuesday, I think on the 24th, they put out their first detailed assessment of 170 divisions across the country, in which Sarvodaya and many CSOs were a significant, made a significant contribution.
I think your contributions have been noted.
Exactly. So in the health sector, as the co-chair of the HCT, as well as AAP, we are working on accountability to affected populations, specifically looking at whether people are getting what they're entitled to, whether their grievances had been heard, and when their voices have been kind of, heard in some of the decisions, some of the quick decisions that they probably it's at a temporary shelter, they make the decision. It's maybe about a relief about, right? And about evacuations or about giving assistance, how much people are part of those decisions widely. I think more and more the message in that case would probably be that how well we work together. Once again, it has shown us that one authority, one organizations cannot respond to a disaster of this scale. So it has to be a unified effort. CSOs had been playing a significant role, not only Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya had been always looked up to as one of the oldest, the big brothers. But then yet we very humbly worked with very many. So the government, the CSOs, the private sector, the international donors, even the international, say our donors in the UK, maybe in other countries, it's an act of togetherness. So we cannot do it. I think that is a strong message. If we do that in togetherness, maybe those plans that we make, the discussions we make will be more collaborative and more fruitful.
Great. Do you want to conclude with your parting words?
Yes, Rohan. I think, of course, we have excellent government agencies who are, who are involved in this type of disaster before and after. And I think they have been technically, they are quite competent, but we really saw lack of coordination. And lack of coordination and preparedness to work in a situation like this, an overwhelming situation, I think is a lesson for the government, that these excellent institutions, their institutional memory, their technical expertise have to come together. And also, of course, as Manu explained, with the civil society. But here, I think they have to think out of the box. For example, now even in this phase, I think the NBRO, National Building Research Organization, which does the assessment of structural stability of institutions to homes, I think they are overwhelmed, right? And there have been certain suggestions, and we have seen even the president, trying to convince or trying to understand how that capacity can be, developed in the interim. So how to get available local assistance to do those assessments. There are, retired engineers, to even final year students and all that. So I think in a situation like this, you really need to think out of the box and get everyone mobilized, and particularly where you need that kind of technical support. So I think that's a lesson, and I hope that the government will, because still I won't say we are in the post-disaster yet.
Right.
Because the monsoon in the northeast is it's happening as we speak.
Yes.
And also next year, by middle of the year, we'll be getting the other monsoon here in the south. And so we will still not be recovering, because the recovery, in my estimate, as a development practitioner and also as a public health specialist, I think it's about at least 2 years, right? And if there's another disaster that will hit while we are in the recovery phase, then I think it's going to be a challenge. So therefore, the institutions must be now better prepared, better coordinated, and I think probably in the Disaster Management Act probably needs to be changed. I hope the government will seriously look at those things, including the opposition, everyone.
Yes.
Because this can't be, we should get away from blame game.
Yeah, this is a matter of national concern.
National concern, and have a concerted effort to rebuild the country.
Can I wanted to add something to what Dr. Vinya said in terms of economic recovery, which is, I think, also, Rohan, which is very significant at this moment, and that sits at the core, because everyone would be very worried about their own livelihoods in a very smaller scale, maybe the household economic situation and also the industry. So billions of, I think, damage have been recorded so far. By different assessments have already been done. So when we look at the pre-crisis as, for example, the pre-crisis as of COVID pre-crisis and the economic pre-crisis, and now we have another pre-crisis situation just few days before, from the 25th, of November. So we have come into a very severe, very grave situation, because as Dr. Vinya, I think, said, it has been escalating. The situation has been degrading. So the poverty, which had been at a very alarming rate, had just been trying to, look better just in October, November. Then again, we saw with this how things have kind of affected largely, and how specifically the most vulnerable, the most marginalized communities have been, threatened over and over food security, over protection issues, especially women, especially we have 25% of women-headed households in the country. We have a very large informal sector in the country. We have SMEs, which are contributing to about 40 to 45% of the GDP. And these SMEs are also at a very infant primary stage, because we are not like IT Indians, kind of have a lot of capital. We don't have the capacities. We have a huge global market, entry issue. And with all of that, now we are in a very, very, vulnerable position. So just to add in terms of, I think this will be a good time that collaboratively we think about how to face this crisis and make this not only a disaster, crisis of a natural disaster, but it's also about health. It's also about education. it's also about protection, and it's also much about economy. So we really need to find. So as a way forward, Sarvodaya has already done their 6 to 9 months roadmap for economic recovery
Going forward.
And we thought, as Dr. Vinya said, there will be more
Bumps ahead.
prizes exactly coming in, and so many unforeseen as well. But yet, I think at the same time, simultaneously, we need to start from now to building the economy. So our focus, Sarvodaya, has been very much focusing at the ground level. So we are very conscious of the situation of the people at the grassroots. And we actually, again, I think I would mention APSL has come on board and given us a green light to start small, smaller brotherhood project from the north.
Yes.
And north. So we are connecting communities, 2 villages from the north and 2 villages from Anuradhapura. And we're doing a project called Village to Village, Heart to Heart.
I see.
That's mainly to promote the economic solidarity, help each other, and to bring in the sense of Shramadana that Sarvodaya is very well, have established over time and known for. So we wanted to bring this as an opportunity for people to get together, but also look at livelihoods, regain livelihoods, make things together, cultivate, because production has to start.
On that highly encouraging note,
Yes.
I thank you, Manu, for being with us
Thank you
today
so
on this
much.
program, and Vinya as well, very much.
Thank you,
you
Rohan.
so much. And I thank both of them and Sarvodaya for their generous role, humongous role that it has played and is still playing moving forward in rebuilding Sri Lanka.